That night, she couldn't sleep. She woke up even earlier than usual, cooked breakfast, and quietly arranged the table again. If he destroyed everything again, she would clean it again. As long as he didn't throw her out, she would keep trying to earn his forgiveness. When Melvin came downstairs dressed for work, she stood by the table immediately. "Good morning, sir," she said softly. "I've made breakfast." He glanced at the table, then at her. "Get ready," he said. "Someone will come in a few hours to take you shopping for a wedding gown and accessories." Her eyes widened. "You will stand in as my bride at the altar," he continued, his tone sharp. "But don't get any ideas. That doesn't make you my wife. It's for the public. I don't want anyone to know what happened between me and Jasmine. 6 months later, I'll pay you off. You can go back to wherever the hell you came from. Do you understand?" Anita stared at him, speechless. "I asked you a question, Anita," he snapped. "Do you understand me?" She nodded slowly. "Yes, sir." "Good." He turned and walked away without sparing her another glance. Anita stood frozen in place, her mind swirling. Even though Melvin had clearly said she was to be his pretend wife for just 6 months, she still couldn't understand why he had chosen her. She wasn't worthy of that role, not even temporarily. Why her? His wedding was just a day away. As a wealthy man, he must have already invited high society, important people. He could have hired someone better suited for the job. Someone trained to carry herself with poise and confidence. Not a maid with a traumatic past. She was still lost in thought when a knock jolted her back to the present. She rushed to the door and opened it. Standing before her was a tall, elegant woman with flawless makeup and a radiant smile. "Hi," the woman said, offering a handshake. "I'm Sol, the wedding planner hired by Mr. Gray. You must be Miss Anita, his bride-to-be." Anita blinked, then nodded and shook her hand. "Yes, I'm Anita." "Perfect," Sol chirped. "Mr. Gray said your fashion sense is zero. His words, not mine. So we're going to fix that." She rattled on. "We've got to head to the mall right away. We'll shop for your wedding gown, after-wedding clothes, casual wear, the works. By the time I'm done with you, you'll look like someone born to be on magazine covers." Anita stood speechless, still struggling to digest the idea of wearing a wedding gown. Her mind drifted again. A bride. She'd never imagined she'd even live long enough to dream of marriage. After being sold off, her only goal had been survival. Love, weddings, happiness, all long buried. Even though it wasn't real, dressing up as Melvin's bride, even for just one day, felt monumental. What would Jasmine think if she found out? Then she remembered Jasmine's threat. A chill ran down her spine. She was pulled back again by Sol, who tapped her gently. "Miss Anita, I'm still waiting for you to get ready." Snapping to attention, Anita nodded quickly and went upstairs to change. Minutes later, she followed Sol into her car, and they left the mansion. Elsewhere, Jasmine sat in a hotel room she had paid for, a temporary haven she shared with Daniel. The room was comfortable, and she had plenty of money thanks to Melvin's past generosity, yet her heart was restless. She had told herself it wouldn't be hard to live without Melvin. But now there was a painful knot inside her chest she couldn't ignore. Daniel walked in from the living room with a wine bottle in hand, eventually flopping on the bed like a carefree child. She stared at him, remembering how this all started. Back then, she had no intentions of betraying Melvin. He had saved her life, picked her up when she had nothing. He gave her a reason to live again. She had loved him in her own way. But Daniel had been hard to ignore, handsome, flirty, and always shirtless around the house. She tried her best to resist. Then one night, while Melvin was away on a business trip, Daniel had knocked on her door. He told her he was in love with her, and she let him in. It was supposed to be a one-time mistake, but it became a craving she couldn't ignore. He touched her in ways Melvin never had, awakened things she never knew existed. Soon, she stopped feeling guilty. Their affair turned into a routine. They made plans, their future. Daniel had even convinced her to go ahead and marry Melvin, promising they'd take everything from him and then kick him out. She believed him. Until tonight. Now, watching Daniel sprawl across the bed drunkenly, her guilt returned. Did he really love her? Then Daniel, in his drunken haze, began to mutter. That bastard Melvin thinks he's a grey. My mom told me everything. He was picked off the street like a stray. Abandoned. Trash. He chuckled bitterly. My dad gave him everything. And now he thinks he's better than me? Took the company, the house, the spotlight. But I'll take it all back. Even if it's the last thing I do. Jasmine sat up in shock. What? She had never known that Melvin wasn't biologically a grey. But even more disturbing was Daniel's obsession with destroying him. Was this all about her? Or just revenge? Had he used her? Suddenly, nothing made sense anymore. Her heart ached. Maybe she did still love Melvin. She glanced at the mirror and saw her reflection, guilt clouding her face. What if I apologize? She thought. Would he forgive me? She quickly freshened up, applied flawless makeup, and changed into an elegant outfit. She called one of Melvin's drivers, confident that none of his staff knew what had happened yet. She was told Melvin was at the office. Hope bloomed in her chest. She rushed there, rehearsing her apology in her mind. She'd beg him, fall to her knees if she had to. But as Melvin exited the building and moved toward his car, she ran up to him. Tears already welling, she fell to her knees. Please, Melvin, I made a mistake. Daniel seduced me. I was foolish. I love you. Please, forgive me. He didn't say a word. He climbed into his car. She got up, pleading. Then, as he started the engine and drove toward her, her eyes widened. Was he? She jumped to the side, narrowly escaping being run over. She crashed to the pavement, skinning her knees and palms. When she looked up, Melvin was gone, never even looking back. She wept. At home, Melvin stormed into what used to be Jasmine's room. He dragged out everything she owned and set it all on fire in the driveway. He stood there, watching the flames dance, his heart burning alongside them. Meanwhile, Anita returned from the mall, carrying more bags than she'd ever owned in her entire life. The wedding planner had made her try on every piece, shoes, dresses, accessories. But it was the wedding gown that truly stunned her. She had never looked so beautiful. She kept her distance from Melvin, still afraid he hated her. When the delivery truck arrived with all her things, she helped unload and quietly placed everything in her room. Sol handed her the gown and accessories personally before reminding her, "Get enough rest tonight. Hair, makeup, stylists, we'll all be here early tomorrow to get you ready." Anita nodded, overwhelmed. Later, she made dinner. She didn't know if Melvin had eaten anything all day. He hadn't come out of his room since returning. He'll get sick if he doesn't eat something, she thought. Summoning courage, she climbed the stairs and knocked gently on his door. "Sir, dinner is ready. Mr. Gray, are you sleeping? I made food." No reply. She knocked again. "Sir." Still silence. She was about to knock again when the door suddenly opened. Melvin glared at her. "Don't you ever knock on my door again," he growled, then slammed the door shut. Anita stood still, hands trembling, eyes stinging with tears. But she whispered to herself, "I will make it up to you. I promise." Anita nodded quickly and ran to her room. The wedding was tomorrow, and even though Mr. Melvin had said this was a contract marriage, he was being so strict and cold toward her that she couldn't imagine standing beside him at the altar. Inside her room, she couldn't sleep. She turned from side to side, over and over again. Yes, he never asked for her opinion. He simply informed her about the wedding like it was some business deal. But despite everything, her heart wouldn't stop racing. How could she, a nobody, walk down the aisle with a man like Melvin Gray? It felt like a dream. No, worse, a trap. Still, she reminded herself that she had no say. Just like she never did in most of the things that had happened in her life. So she closed her eyes, whispered a prayer, and left everything in fate's hands. Meanwhile, Melvin was wide awake in his own room. He regretted ever meeting Jasmine. No matter how hard he tried, he couldn't shake off her betrayal. He hated himself for loving her so deeply, for spoiling her, for planning the kind of wedding she had always dreamed of. And now he was about to marry someone he barely trusted. Yes, it was only a contract marriage. 6 months. But it still didn't feel right. He couldn't stop thinking about how Anita had kept Jasmine's secret. And yet, compared to Jasmine, she still seemed pure. Eventually, Melvin fell asleep. But because it was so late, he overslept. The next morning, Sol, the wedding planner, was already in Anita's room, on the phone organizing things. The makeup artist and hairstylist were expected to arrive soon. Melvin was still in bed when Terry arrived and knocked on his door. He had assumed Melvin would be dressed and ready by now. But when the door opened and Melvin appeared in pajamas, hair tousled and clearly just waking up, Terry blinked. "What's wrong with you, man? Why aren't you ready?" "I slept late," Melvin muttered. Terry sighed and waited as his friend brushed his teeth, took a shower, and finally dressed. On their way out, Melvin stopped at Anita's door and knocked. The wedding planner opened it. "Make sure you bring her to the venue. Don't be late," he said and walked off. Anita didn't see him. She was having her makeup done when she heard his voice outside the door, and her heart skipped a beat. The makeup artist, a bubbly girl barely older than her, smiled and said, "You're so pretty, Miss Anita. And lucky. You're marrying Melvin Gray, handsome, rich, and powerful. You'll never lack anything again, even if you never work a day in your life." Anita forced a small smile. If only the girl knew the truth. When her preparations were complete, Anita stood in front of the mirror, stunned. The reflection looking back at her didn't feel real. She looked beautiful. The 3 women helping her all stared in awe. Each of them secretly wished they were the ones marrying Melvin. After a few photos, Anita was escorted to the resort. Her eyes widened as soon as she arrived. The place was breathtaking. Decorated with elegance and glamour, it didn't look like a wedding. It looked like a royal coronation. Dozens of luxury cars lined the driveway. Well-dressed guests mingled, many of whom were clearly high society. She stepped out of the car and instantly felt her knees buckle. This was too much. The ceremony was outdoors. The stage was dazzling, and a priest was already waiting. Below the stage sat Melvin, dashing in his black and white suit, and beside him, his best friend Terry. Sol turned to her. "We're right on time. They are about to begin." Anita looked around nervously. "Please, can you walk with me to the front?" "I can't," Sol said gently. "I'm not dressed for this crowd. This is your moment, Anita. You'll have to walk alone." With that, Sol stepped back and left her standing at the entrance. Anita froze. Thousands of eyes were on her. Some guests turned to look. Others whispered, Cameras clicked. Phones recorded. She kept her face down. Her grip on the bouquet tightened to stop her hands from shaking. What if I fall? What if I mess up? What if I faint? Then the noise grew louder. She looked up. Melvin was walking toward her. He looked stunning, tall, sharp, confident. He made her heart race. She feared he was going to scold her for hesitating. But when he reached her, he smiled. A real, soft smile. He extended his hand. She stared at it, stunned. He reached for hers and gently intertwined their fingers. The crowd gasped and cooed. Camera flashes went off like fireworks. Together, they walked to the altar, side by side. The priest began the ceremony. Everything felt like a dream. Then came the moment for their vows. Melvin turned to her with a steady voice and said, "From the moment I met you, you gave my life meaning and purpose. I promise to love and cherish you forever." Anita's eyes widened. No one had told her she had to say vows. Her hands trembled. But then she took a breath, looked into his eyes, and said, "You saved me and gave me a reason to live. I will treasure you for as long as I live." The crowd erupted in cheers and claps. Melvin wasn't moved. He assumed Anita had rehearsed something nice to please the public. He didn't know that her words had come from the depths of her heart. To her, this was real. Even if it only lasted 6 months, she would cherish every second. Then came the final part. Terry stepped forward with the rings. They slid them onto each other's fingers. Anita thought that was it. But then the priest said, "You may now kiss your bride." And before she could blink, Melvin pulled her close and crushed his lips against hers. Anita stood frozen, cheeks flushed, eyes wide as the kiss ended. Melvin, on the other hand, looked completely unaffected. He turned to the crowd and waved with a confident smile as the entire resort burst into applause and cheers. But Anita couldn't meet anyone's eyes. That was her first kiss. And no matter how much she tried to push the feeling aside, her heart was racing. There was a tingling in her chest and a warmth low in her stomach she had never felt before. She had always respected Melvin, feared him even. But now, being kissed by him in front of the whole world, it was a moment she'd never forget. People began to approach them, offering warm congratulations. Anita recognized none of them. Wealthy strangers, high society women, polished businessmen. All of them knew Melvin. None of them knew her. She overheard a few women complimenting her beauty. Someone even said, "She's so elegant. He chose well." Anita's heart skipped again. Does Melvin think I look beautiful too? She wondered. But he hadn't given her a single compliment. No soft smile. No sign that he was moved by her presence. She told herself not to be foolish. He was just doing what he had to do. Once the makeup and gown were gone, she'd go back to being plain Anita, the maid. "What are you thinking about?" Melvin asked in a low voice. "Here." She blinked at him, pulled from her thoughts. He smiled stiffly and said through clenched teeth, "Stop zoning out. Smile. Act like you're the happiest bride in the world. You look like you were dragged here at gunpoint." Anita quickly straightened her posture and forced a soft smile. She looked around the crowd, trying to stay present and avoid getting lost in her head again.